Finally, finally, finally. This is so pretty, the bag. Yeah, really, really pretty.
Okay, are we centered properly?
Okay.
Do you want me to sit where you are and you come and see?
What's your judgment
Yeah.
call?
It just doesn't. It doesn't give. It's not giving.
But
Oh, let me just. Let me just show you what you look like. It doesn't. It's live.
oh, you started the live already.
You started live already?
So they see us talking about this right now.
Oh my gosh.
But I do want to make sure everyone can hear. So
The jumbo box, you want it in and out, because half of it's in and half of it's out. You want the box in?
it doesn't really matter at this
Yeah, I don't think so.
point. Okay, so testing.
Okay. I can listen. But will it hear, when you hear it back in the conversation?
Testing, testing.
Okay.
Is it? I don't know if.
So you have someone aside? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I want to hear. Is it possible? Yeah, if you could just, yeah. I don't. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I think we were
Thank
just
you.
making sure the sound was coming through.
Okay.
All right. I think we're ready to start. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Thank you for joining us. We did it. We're here.
Yeah. Yeah. Finally.
It's been a thing. It's been a thing,
Yeah.
everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Kimberly Seals Allers. I am so honored to be speaking to you live from Ghana. I'm from Accra, where I have spent an amazing week in a cultural and social immersion, really focused on maternal health. And one of the things that I am struck by, everyone who knows me knows that there's nothing more exciting for me than learning about what mothering looks like and what motherhood looks and feels like in other places. So I'm so excited to bring this conversation to you all. I'm so honored to have my guest here. So we're going to get right to it. Welcome to the first live episode from Ghana of Birthright. Hello.
Hi. Hi, Kimberly.
All right. Well, let's get started. Tell us who you are.
So my name is Eno Quagraine, and I'm a mom of three, two boys and a girl, three energetic kids. And this is my birth story.
Mhm. So let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about how you define yourself for yourself, right? We're mothers, but we're not just mothers. We're not only mothers. So how do you define yourself? Tell us about who you are.
In one word, or
Oh, no.
okay, because I'm a talkative. So yes. Well, I'm a talkative. I'm a doer. I would say I'm a doer. Like once I set my mind to do something, I'll make it happen. I don't like to let myself down. I picture something and I'm like, okay, I don't want to look back and then say I didn't do this thing that I said I was going to do. So once I set out to do something, I'll make it happen no matter what. Sometimes it can be toxic because yeah, like sometimes it's like it can be a bit unhealthy because I'll do whatever it is to make it happen. When I say whatever it is, I don't mean anything illegal, but I just mean like sometimes I wear myself out and things like that, but I'm a doer. There's something that my friends say, they call me talk and do, because once I talk I will do that thing.
Yes, and I'm learning that not everybody's like that. There are a lot of talkers, but not enough doers.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's get into the titles. You are the founder of Talkative Mom.
Mhm.
Tell us what that is.
So Talkative Mom, it's a platform for mothers. Now it's evolved to a platform for parents. It was started in 2018, and it was a blog. And I was looking for a name, and I was like, okay, wait, I'm a talkative. I've been on the talkative list since I was 6. So, and then I'm also going to talk on this blog anyway. So I guess, and then I was now a mom as well, and I was going to share my motherhood journey. So it just kind of made sense to come up with that name. And it was really catchy for a lot of people at the time. And this was just in 2018. And at the time, motherhood stories were not addressed in Ghana because in our culture, when you share too much of your pregnancy, it almost seemed like it's like you're setting yourself up for like the evil eye, that kind of thing. Yeah, because we're very superstitious, very spiritual, very religious. So it's like you keep it hush hush till you're done having the baby, and then even with that, you don't really talk about it. They call it like exposing the pregnancy. Like don't share it before it's time, whether it's the last trimester or not. So once I started journaling my motherhood journey, and I was very candid, and I think that is what people loved, because Ghanaians don't like to speak, but they like to listen. Like when I say listen, I mean they like the gossip,
They like the tea.
the tea. So once it's not them, oh, they would read. So yeah, like I started blogging, and I mean I can go on and on. I don't know if you want me to continue.
No, I
Or,
mean, I
yeah.
just love that, creating a space for moms to share their experiences. But you started at a blog.
Yes.
And where are you now? Because I had the privilege of attending an event at the Talkative Mom studios. So there's more to share.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So 2018 launched the blog. Blogged. So I had just had my first in 2017, November 2017. Launched the blog March 2018. Found out I was pregnant that same year. So 3 months after having my first, I found out I was pregnant again with my second. So then the story just continued. Then, so 2019 still blogging. 2020 COVID happened. At the time, what I was doing business wise was events. So I was doing a lot of theme parties for kids. My background is also marketing, so I studied marketing strategy. So I'd always wanted to practice that, but then my passion was also in events. So I was kind of like blogging on the side, and it wasn't a business. But in before 2020, 2019, I decided to register Talkative Mom as a business, only because my husband said, well, wouldn't it be nice to include a shop on your blog, so that now you're over here sharing all these things about great products and brands you're buying from. So why don't you just like include a shop so people can just shop directly from your website? I said, okay, but why don't I just register? I love registering businesses, by the way. So I'm like, okay, let me register and make it like official. Registered it, started the shop, no one bought. And then 2020, what happened? 2020, I got the idea. I said, we have all these apps like What to Expect Baby Center, but we don't have one that is relevant to our setting. And my husband, he's a tech whiz. So I said, how about we build an app? And he's just like, he gets it. So when you're in tech, you get a lot of people reaching out to you like, oh, why don't we build the Uber of this, the this of that? So he's like, oh, no, you again. And I'm like, I think this will actually, work. So fast forward, he said, okay, let's build this. He went ahead, built it, and then I hired my first employee because I needed to kind of do a bit of data entry and all that. 2021 February, Talkative Mom app was launched. In 48 hours, it was the number 2 parenting app in the UK and the US. It was under Pinterest, and it's online, so people can check it. It was part of the top 100 apps. It blew up. Now the good thing about that was now brands in Ghana, especially the multinationals like the Unilevers and things like, started to reach out, because they were like, oh, like, okay, I guess now you have the platform that we would like to advertise our products on. So a lot of them reached out. But then the way the app was, we didn't have people staying on the app because of the features that we had at the time. So it kind of dipped. But then on the other side, I had all these brands that wanted to work with me. So then now the business was like more of like the influencer bit, the marketing bit, and then now I could apply my marketing strategy background to it. So that was in 2021. 2021 as well, I said, well, COVID, we're kind of like out of COVID, not out, but people wanted to meet socially. So why don't I start to put together some events? So I started to, I did like an entrepreneurship seminar for mothers, different events like that. And now my events background as well was also applied there. So, all these things were picking up for me. And then in 2022, end of 2022, I said, it would be nice to have my own space so that I could host more of these events, because I was having some challenges with the events spaces that I was hosting at the time. And so end of 2022, I found the studio. So it was an old building. It was right behind my parents' house. And the way the building, where the building was located, it was the only, the road in front of it, that is the only gate that goes out. So no one was going there. No one could see that it was up for rent or anything like that. So it was kind of like a distressed It was almost like a distress. I won't say it wasn't a sale; it was a lease.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to speak to the landlord, and the landlord, because I grew up there, he knew me. I was kind of like a granddaughter to him. So I kind of like explained what I do and all that. And he's like, "Oh, this is like very noble of you, and I'd like to help out." So we negotiated very flexible terms. I didn't have to pay in dollars, because in Ghana, rent can be in dollars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So especially in East Legon. So that was a great thing. And then I got a 20-year lease. And that is
Wow.
not, yeah. I always say that it's because of the relationship. I wouldn't have gotten that. And then I knew I also could not afford the space at the time. So I said, I need to get another business so that I could sublet a portion to. And then I got a friend of mine that I'd actually done some marketing for. And then she said, "Oh, if your people are going to be coming here, I know I'm going to also get some great, foot traffic coming into my shop. So I would like to get the space." So then the rent from that, I was able to use it to renovate my portion. And then, it just kept evolving.
Okay.
And now, yeah. So
So the Talkative Mom Studios has an amazing space for events,
yep.
but it also has a spa.
It has a spa. So that's my friends.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a business. It has a spa. So we kind of like work together, because and then we have the daycare.
And you have the childcare.
We have the childcare, and it's evolving into a preschool by January
Wow.
2025.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting, because I
Yeah.
think when we think about support for moms, yes, they need a place to talk, but they really need a place for childcare. They need a place to take care of themselves.
Mhm.
And so the fact that you were thinking about that from really more of a holistic way, I think is really exciting, very commendable. The space is beautiful. And it was really exciting for us to attend an event there. So you've been busy, because someplace in all of them 2022, 2021, 2023s, you had a baby.
I know. So I had a baby. I found out I was pregnant early 2023. That was last year. And that was like in the midst of like the renovation and all that. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to have to make this work somehow. I did not sit. I was just like pregnant and working the entire time. So yeah, but my baby, she's really been an inspiration for me, because even with the daycare and all that, like I'm kind of like putting measures and things in place that I feel work for her. And I've realized that it's picking up.
That's right. And
Yeah.
you are living it. So you are very close to what the needs are.
Yep.
Tell us about your pregnancy journey, because we want to hear about this birth, but tell us a little bit about that pregnancy time, working, where your mind was, how your body was feeling.
So I've always had like really uneventful pregnancies. My pregnancies are just normal, I guess. Like I don't have any I'm never nauseous. I'm never, like it's just I'm just eating.
Right.
I always have a great appetite. So yeah, but then my births are usually traumatic. Yeah. So usually go through like the 9 months easy breezy, and then the birth of my first, that was really traumatic, and that's what inspired me to start the blog. So I come from a home where my mom is very open, but she wasn't open enough about her pregnancy and her birth and what childbirth really was like. So she just said, "Oh, you're a woman and you can do it," and that was it. So I was just like, okay, I guess. So I was in labor for 48 hours.
Wow.
And that was like, it was crazy, crazy pain. And I remember being in the room, and my mom and my husband were both in there. And then I said, "You know what? I'm in so much pain." Wait. So I wasn't dilating quick enough. I'd been at 3 cm for like 5 hours. They would come check, and it was still 3 cm. Also, I had no idea what it was like to check for dilation. I thought it was like a machine, and they'll just kind of like strap on you. So when they started to insert their fingers, I was like, what is happening? Like, I'm already in so much pain. I can't deal with this. Anyway, so my mom, I asked them, I said, "Can I have an epidural?" And these were all conversations I had not had with any of them. And I didn't even know I had to have these kind of conversations. So I remember when I requested for it, they kind of like looked like, I don't know if, we can do that. And then my mom said, "Oh, no, you're a strong African woman and you'll be able to give birth without an epidural." And I'm looking at her like, what? So anyway, they're like, "Okay, don't worry. When you're about 5-6 cm, we'll talk to the doctor. And if he says, okay, we'll administer it." I'm like, okay. And so it was kind of slow. almost 48 hours later, they come check, and then I was 8 c.m. and they're like, "Oh, we have to
Now
take."
it's too
Yeah,
late.
it's too late. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" By then, my mom, my husband, they had all left. And so, one of the things I'll touch on is the fact that I love my mom, but I did not need her in that space. I feel, if anything, she delayed the birth because of, like, a lot of times when people are fearful, and I just found out recently that when you are also fearful, it delays
Your
you know
cervix
the
will not dilate.
exactly, and that's what was happening. So when they left,
Wow.
and then, so anyway, so I go in, and then I'm by then I'm exhausted, so I can't push, and they're asking me to push. They're like, "Okay, you know what, we guess we have to cut." So it was like a episiotomy. It was time for an episiotomy. Did not what's it called, like, is it sedate or whatever, like, didn't nothing. It was just, they actually asked first. I remember they were like, "Oh, should we?" And I was just like, whatever, I don't care, like, whatever you have to do. They're like, "Okay, then we just."
Oof.
So yeah, it was,
That just hurt me.
Yeah.
Oof.
And I remember, when I was having the birth, my husband came in during that time, and I remember he said, like, seeing that, he was like, "Okay, you know what, one and done." Like, he doesn't want any, like, this, no. So yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot for me. And then even the recovery, and I blogged about that a lot, where I called that period the dark days, because it was just very dark. I felt alone. I was one of the first among my friend group to have a baby. So I felt no one really understood me. I didn't even know why and how I was feeling. And I remember everyone saying, "Oh, you just had a baby, you should be grateful," and all that. And I didn't feel grateful. I even remember when they put my baby on me, I just wanted him off. So I didn't bond with him immediately. Yeah, like, nothing. The things I saw in movies, I was just like, "Oh, why am I not emotional enough?" Like, things like that. And then also I suffered postpartum depression. So yeah, it was a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. I want to just also give, because I know people are curious about, so many people have been asking me about birth in Ghana and what's very different for us. So just as a level set, in Ghana, people give birth with midwives as a standard practice of care, right? This is something that we are fighting for in America. And we recognize that we are an outlier, and that every other country, midwives are, helping people deliver their babies as a standard practice of care. You don't need to be with a OBGYN unless you have a complication. That is correct, right?
Yes.
Meanwhile, in America, as a standard practice of care, we deliver with an OBGYN unless you find some unique place. Admittedly, there are more of them, but there's still very few for the size of our country where you can have birth with a midwife, right? So we are by default giving birth with a surgeon for no reason. And this is leading to a very high C-section rate. That C-section rate is contributing to our very high maternal mortality, and particularly our Black maternal mortality rate. And a lot of it starts with how we are birthing, and that we are not under the care of midwives as a standard practice. You have to seek that out, and it can be hard to find depending on where you live.
That is interesting, because in Ghana, we don't like the fact that we only give birth with midwives.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I hadn't, well, my third birth was different, but when my first two, I had not met my midwife. So I was just like, this is a stranger, like, and it was two women. It's like, I don't know them. I've been with my OBGYN the entire time. And
so you were getting your prenatal care from an OBGYN.
Yep.
But when it came time to give birth, you switched to a midwife.
And I was like, where is he? Like, why? Yeah. And no one told me. So I was like, why is he not here? So I started to panic, because I was like, I need him here, because he knows, my medical record, everything, and like, who are these ladies? So it was the opposite.
It was the opposite. And actually now we are starting to have more midwifery-led prenatal care. But you go into that hospital, to that OB to deliver, and you just got to hope that training, because midwives teach you so much. It's going to help you have a different type of delivery, what questions to ask, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very different. In fact, I was sharing that I was here, people, with some of our Earth ambassadors, and they were like, "Oh, they're birth centers." And birth centers are where we have to go to give birth with a midwife, right? Because it's very hard to find it in a hospital, and it's only one type that's allowed in the hospital. It's a whole thing.
Right.
And so I'm like, well, everybody gives birth with a midwife here, so you don't really need birth centers by the way that we think of birth centers. But we also know that, midwives can have their own challenges, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I think as a model, it's very interesting to see a place where there's nothing but midwives. We got to visit a hospital here, and you go to the maternity ward and it's just midwives. And the doctors are on a whole nother floor where you get sent to if you have an emergency.
Yeah,
They're not even there.
Having a doctor is a privilege. Like there, just very few people have the doctor in there. Yeah.
Very interesting. So you had this traumatic birth, but you decided to do something different for your third child. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so by the time I had my second, I'd found out about doulas. And a friend of mine, actually, she had trained as a doula. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I read more on it. I actually even interviewed her, and I was like, okay, so more people were curious about it. And I said, I'm definitely getting a doula for my third. So once I found out I was pregnant, it was girl, girl or boy. I think I would have had a doula, but it was just extra special because I had two boys already.
You had two boys and you really wanted your girl.
I really wanted it.
So excited that you got your girl. You wanted to do all the things.
I needed to be perfect. So I had at the time I had launched the studios, and we had actually started having birth classes at the studios.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had a lady. So she was actually American, full American. And she left and went. And then she was supposed to be my doula. And then she said, well, I have someone in mind. So you can talk to her and find out if, So I spoke to her, and that was Bobette.
Okay.
And then we gelled instantly. So I was like, okay, so absolutely, you're going to be my doula. So she took me through everything. We planned out the birth. So we had the birth plan. We went to see my OBGYN, and he is honestly, he's very open, open-minded. Here in Ghana, the hospitals some hospitals can be a bit closed off, and especially when they don't understand what is this, what do you mean by you have a birth plan? Or it may not go according to plan, that kind of thing. But he was like, okay, yeah. So he printed it all out for the midwives. So by the time I arrived, they all knew what my plan was, what exactly I wanted. I didn't want to lay on my back anymore because I felt it was unnatural and it was too much. I exerted too much effort when I was having the babies. Also, I remember when they were kind of lowering me back when I was going to lay for my two births. I just panicked. I don't know. There was something about it. I was like, I don't feel I'm supposed to be on my back. And I never had a baby.
Right.
So
when your instincts were telling you this isn't right.
So when I read on it, and I was like, oh, so you can actually squat. I was like, are you kidding me? So I was like, I'm definitely going to do that.
This is really interesting because I think for us, we would think that a midwife would be the only place where that could possibly happen. And so I think this is really the power of systems, right? So even though, the title of a midwife and what a midwife traditionally has been known for is about a different way of birthing, more natural positions, you can get up on floors, you can squat, blah, blah, blah. Within a system, some of that gets lost.
Yep.
It seems like some of that gets lost.
Yeah, they just do as they're told. So it's oh, you lay on your back, and that's just what it is, especially in hospitals. So when I went in there and I realized, oh, they had this, I've forgotten what it was called, but it was a birthing stool. They had a particular name for it. And I was like, oh, perfect. This is what I want to give birth on. And that was it. So I ended up giving birth on the birthing stool with my doula.
Okay.
My doula was the only one in the room with me because now I knew what I wanted, and I told my mom, you can't be in there, you can stress me out. So, and my husband was out of the country at the time. So thankfully I had a doula. So she was there throughout. She came when I felt some labor signs. I called her, and she came immediately. And then we went to the hospital. She was with me the entire time. Played. She had asked. Well, we had a plan. So she had asked if I wanted some music, and she had all these affirmations that were playing in her voice. It's so soothing. So she was playing, and then I was sitting on the birthing ball, and then she was just rubbing my back. I remember she had all these, these massages that really ease the pain, from my bottom, waste. So yeah, so she did that, and then eventually it was time. The nurses, the midwives were all very accommodating, took me in, and then yeah.
So another thing that I learned is
Mhm.
that doulas aren't as widely known or used here.
No.
I mean, we still have a lot of work to do in the States, but we have a growing number of doulas,
Mhm.
and kind of training doulas as we consider them as a vital part of our perinatal workforce is a big priority right now.
Mhm.
So I was surprised to learn that there aren't many doulas here,
No.
and that people don't really know about them.
No, no, no. Because I also think that maybe it also goes back to how we were brought up, and also the culture and all that. It's always family.
Mm,
Everything is family, from marriage to birth to breastfeeding and things like that. I remember when we had to stop the birth and lactation classes at the studios because the numbers were not encouraging, because it's like, oh, an aunt will teach you how to breastfeed. Also, it's
right,
natural. Like, why can't you breastfeed?
right.
So to bring in a professional and actually pay for that service is not something we embrace here. So it's like, oh, you have to bring a doula and then you pay extra for her to come in. It's just not something we embrace. Bring an aunt, bring a friend, anybody else, but like a I don't know. So it's just it's still something that will take some time. And then also it's almost seen like it's for like a certain class of people.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you're comfortable, like, oh, you have like the means to, that kind of thing. It's just something that we don't embrace here. And yeah, it will take some time, but Ghanaians really like to stick to what they know. Yeah.
So let's go back to your birth. Like, take us to the moment when you pushed out your baby girl.
Yeah, so um I dilated really quickly this time,
Mhm.
really, really quickly. I think I got to the hospital around 2 p.m. and then by 4:45 the baby was out. And so once the baby, so let me tell you something interesting. I didn't believe I was having a girl. That was the other thing. So the entire time I'm like, okay, when the baby's out, like I need to check and make sure it's a girl. So I remember when she was, I was like, okay, it's a girl. Like I was, I can't explain it.
You were like, I want to see you
I was
upside
serious.
down.
So
So you wanted a girl.
yeah, it was a girl. I was really, really, really happy. But then I was exhausted. I'm always exhausted after births. And I thought it was also going to be that bonding moment, but it wasn't. Like I checked, it was like, all fine, but I
They
didn't
give you immediate skin to
know
skin?
they did.
Okay.
They did. Well, my doula made sure that he
Mm.
did, and that was what I thought. Oh, you know what? I advocate for people all the time, so I will advocate for myself. But a lot of times in that position, you can't. You always need someone else to advocate for you. So she advocated for me a lot.
Mm.
So then she's like skin to skin. Like she just made sure everything was. I was like dazed.
Right.
Yeah, I was dazed. So, and I think for them it was just more like, okay, we have to whatever the line, set the line to make sure there's no clotting, and that was what they were concerned about. But she's just like, the baby has to be on here, like, to try and stimulate some breast milk and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So yeah.
Do you remember what she looked like? What was your first thought about how she looked when you saw her?
So when I saw her, she looked like my sister-in-law.
Oh, really? It's always interesting. My first child came out looking like my father, which was very concerning. I was like, it is interesting whose faces you see in that
Right.
moment, but very interesting,
Yeah, I
very
was like,
interesting.
okay, she looks exactly like my husband's sister. I was really
Mm.
shocked, but yeah, but then like, now she looks like me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got her back. You got her back. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And so, when you think about those different birth experiences, I'm assuming that, well, I don't want to assume, but what do you think made the difference from kind of baby 1 to baby 3 and that progression for you?
I would say my third birth was, I was empowered.
Mm.
By then I was empowered. By then I had read a lot more. I was exposed to a lot more things, like even like health workers and things like that. I was a bit more confident in like insisting on what I wanted, what I absolutely did not want. So yeah, I was empowered. Like people talk about empowered births, and I I feel like I finally understand what that means. Like it's just like questioning things. Okay, like I'm not going to just take this like just because it's coming from a doctor, I would ask questions more, tell them what I want, and then we can meet in the middle if it doesn't really work, it's not feasible and things like that. And then also, I think just having the doula, I mean, I'm not here to like tell everyone to get a doula, but just having someone to advocate for me helped me big time.
Mm-hmm.
I always jokingly say that my husband was also in the country, but even if he was there, I don't really know like what difference is it going to make, because he in his own character, he doesn't ask questions. So it really wouldn't have done much for me. And then also a lot of the things that she knows, he doesn't. So she would be able to say, "Oh, please put the baby up," but he wouldn't think to do that.
Right,
So
right.
I just really felt empowered. I felt more confident in like, the experience this time around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing I actually
Yeah.
wanted to touch on. Also, I had my last baby at a different hospital. So the first two I had at one hospital. It was great, but then my gynecologist at the time left the country. And I was just so comfortable with him that I was like, okay, you know what? I want to like try anyone else. The new hospital that I went there because I know the doctor who owns it. So I said, okay, absolutely, I'm having this birth here, and I felt it was like home. So I think the health facility that I had the baby as well, I kind of helped enrich the experience this time around. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, what's up for number 4?
No, there's no number 4. There's no number 4. I actually the very next day I tied my tubes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very next day I tied my tubes. So because the thing is, this baby was not planned.
Mm,
I had suffered an ectopic after my second,
mm,
and it was a ruptured ectopic, so it was like almost fatal.
mhm.
And so I'd been on birth control for about, I was never on birth control, but then I was kind of forced to get on birth control because I was like, at this point, I don't want this to happen, and I don't know what my options were. That was like a couple of years ago. So I said, okay, I guess I'll just get on birth control. So I got on an implant, and it was a hormonal implant, and it was horrible. It was just horrible. I was like, what is this? But I saw it through because it was a 3-year implant. So when the 3 years was up, I went in to have it taken out, and I was like, I don't want it back in. Let me just explore other options, and that's when I got pregnant.
Okay.
So
That's another option.
so once that happened, I was like, okay, you know what? I don't think I want to, like, if I'm done, I know I'm done. So I always wanted 2 boys and a girl, surprisingly, and I wanted it in this order.
Okay.
So I've gotten what I want. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
was like, let me just tie my tubes. So that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. I think it's important that we, think about motherhood in this and kind of like the spectrum of all of our reproductive health and all the things that could happen. I think that's really, really important. I'm really struck by culture. Like one of the things that I love about being here is the deep culture, the cultural norms that I've had to learn about. We don't pass things with our left hand, just being called madame and always saying uncle and auntie, there's culture, and I really, really appreciate that. And I think there's also a culture, because you talked about having an empowered pregnancy, and I want to ask you about the realities of what that looks like for women in a culture where maybe men can be expected to be deferred to in ways that perhaps more American women be like, we're not doing that. But, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's a different culture, a different expectation. So how does, for you, what has been your experience, looking at motherhood and mothers here with the culture, which may not allow you to be empowered, and how you move in that space? Are folks resisting?
Yeah. So I think the home that I grew up in was a little bit different. I am the only girl among 5 boys. So I've always had to be like really vocal, like really tough and things like that. And my mom, she encourages like questioning and things. Even my dad, actually, he's passed away, but they both encourage things like that. So I've always just been very curious and very like, oh, but why is what? Okay, so you've always done this way, but why? Like, or why can't it be switched up and things like that. So I've always, it's been in my nature. So even on my platform, like whenever I would say, oh, go seek a second opinion and things like that, it was just a natural, it wasn't something I read. I just felt like, oh, maybe like just because you're saying this doesn't mean that it's supposed to, happen that way. And so I realized that, oh, that is not like, not that I realized, I always kind of knew because I mean, I grew up and lived in Ghana, but I just didn't know like how deep that was. Some messages I'll get from mothers telling me, oh, I really wanted to get a lactation consultant in, but my mom is like, no. And I'm like, but you're grown, so, there were all these things. And I realized, okay, so I'm in a bubble. I need to come out of this bubble and kind of like see what is really going on. And so I was like, okay, let me share more. So it will get people thinking like, okay, maybe, oh, okay, actually, I think I can do this. But again, I understood that culturally, things are done a certain way. They've always said, oh, mothers have been having babies, for years now, and they naturally breastfeed. And so whenever a woman, especially in Ghana, like when you're not able to breastfeed, you can't even talk about it because it's like, what's wrong with you? Right. And then I remember a couple of years ago, there was an ad that I think it was like, I don't know, it was Ministry of Health or something. It was for breastfeeding, and they were trying to get mothers to breastfeed during August, breastfeeding month. And they said, and the song, I was like, oh my God, the song said that it was in a local language, and the song said, the breast is not for the man, the breast is for the baby. I was like, why is this something that has to be sung? No, I didn't get, because I was like, we know, like, what? So that should let you know, like, when you talk about body autonomy, that should let you know that they had to say it just so that a lot of the women would, not just the women, the men would hear it and know that, okay, you know what? Maybe, yeah, like it's a lot of things, like a lot of like unlearning and like, just like rethinking a lot of things. Okay, actually, maybe we should do this differently and things like that, while respecting like where we come from. Like so I came from a home where my dad was extremely traditional, but then also an academician. So it was like, the two. So we grew up like, if you're speaking the local language, you can't mix it with Tree. Now I do, but then like back then in the house, when you're speaking Tree, speak Tree. Don't speak English. When you're speaking English, speak English, but speak Tree at home. Things like that. Like I went to my hometown. I know what the culture is. Like I know how to dance all the local, things like that. But at the same time, I also knew that there's this other side to me where it's like, I will question things like the left hand, for example. The fact that you brought that up, I was like, okay, because I'm so sorry, but everyone knows my stance on it. I'm like, people are left-handed. I was like, I say this all the time, like, people are left-handed.
It's a superstition.
So the thing about the left hand is, they say that you use that to do things that are disgusting. So for example, if you're pooping, you wipe with your left.
Okay.
That is our culture.
Okay.
So why would you shake someone's hand with a hand that you wipe your poop with?
Okay.
So
Which, even though you're not using your bare hand to wipe
I'm
your
like,
poop, but that's
that
okay.
So I'm like, left-handed people are really suffering here. But yeah. So and then also like even my husband, like he's left-handed, but he was forced to write with his right. You will be forced in school to write with your right hand. And then when that happens, you realize that this is a long conversation, but you end up it affects your brain.
Right.
So then he ended up being an average student for years, till when he got to the university and he didn't have to write and he loved tech, so he could bring his laptop in and then type. That was when he started to excel.
Interesting.
And these are things that we don't talk about, because it's just like, that is what it is. Left. If you're greeting, like I remember my dad, like when I walk and I see adults and you're grouped, you start greeting from the right. You don't start greeting from the left. I'm like, okay, culture, I get it. That doesn't do anything to me. But if I am left-handed and I'm picking something, I should be able to pick it. But it's like,
no, you can't do that. No, you can't.
So it's just, so it's just really finding that balance. But I think a lot of these conversations, a lot of times, the older generation, trust me, they haven't even heard some of these things. Sometimes they're like, when they hear it, it's like, oh, oh, okay, maybe, but no one really brings it up. So
No one really challenges it.
no.
The other thing that came up, we were in the event at your studios,
Mm-hmm.
and the sister who calls herself the Fibroid Queen, who did an amazing job.
Yeah.
But also just talking about the stigma of other reproductive health issues, right? Like
Mhm.
people could have fibroids or endometriosis, but not want to say anything because they don't want to be viewed as damaged by a man. How do we fix that?
I think it's not just about that, but it's also because anything that has to do with our reproductive system in any way is viewed as like private and
Mhm.
like, oh, like icky and not something you should talk about. Like recently, I went for an event where there was a monologue and it was called the vagina monologue, right?
Mhm.
And they had to warn everyone ahead of time that, oh, it's going to be very like, you get one,
Talking about
yeah.
the word,
And
the
then
vagina.
and then, so when it started, like I remember because I was actually moderating the panel and I turned to look at the panelist piece and I could see like people were kind of like uncomfortable, like looking down. And I was like, guys, like, you know, like
We
what's
all
going
have
on
one
here?
if you're a female at birth.
Yeah. So it's like, so why would I, let's say I have fibroids, like why would I want to bring up any issue that has to do with what is going on here? You know, so it's like there's no appropriate time to bring it up and things like that. So people do hide issues like that. My mom, she suffered fibroids for years, and eventually she had to have her womb taken out
Mhm.
after she had had all her babies. That was the option that she was presented with, and she took that option. But she was open and she told us about it, so that's different. But usually, it's not just women, men and women. You have your dad die, and then you find out later that, oh, he had like, you know, cancer, whatever. Like they don't share.
They don't share.
Yeah, I think it's for the men it's just seen as weak, and then for the women it's seen as just this private thing that you know you shouldn't talk about. And there are all these things that we don't I don't know, it's just people don't like to have uncomfortable conversations here.
Right.
It's like, what are you sharing it for, you know? So
Well, that's why your work was so incredible, because you were being willing to have the conversations and to use yourself as a model to say, I'm going to share my story as a way, not just say, hey, you guys should talk, but you were actually doing the talking and leading, which I think was incredible. And you can see how it can open others up, right? That for me is like the power of storytelling. It
yeah.
actually gives permission for others to share their story. I always say stories are how we get free, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how we get free,
Yeah.
by sharing our stories, because by doing so, others receive permission to also share their stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what mothering looks like in Ghana. Like in the
Mhm.
US, we have a number of challenges. You know, we are the only industrialized nation that does not have a federal paid leave. In the US, 25% of women go back to work 14 days after giving birth,
Mhm.
and that makes my vagina hurt.
Oh, goodness.
And, you know, really it depends on your employer to dictate or determine, you know, how generous they are about how much paid leave you would have.
Mhm.
So paid leave is a big issue. We are disconnected from the culture of breastfeeding. So lactation support is still kind of missing, particularly in our communities. So what are some of we'll talk about the joys, but what are some of the challenges of for mothers in Ghana?
So I mean, let me even just start with my mom. Like when my mom had us, she had to quit working because she wouldn't get hired. A lot of times when you have your first, some people may disagree, but I've spoken to quite a number of women who have said that when they had their first and went in for a job interview, their employer, whoever, well, if it's an employer or whatever, told them, "Oh, you just had your first, so I know you have more. We won't hire you." Or sometimes
And they're allowed to say that.
sometimes they would say, "Oh, Ghana." The thing about Ghana is we don't sue. Yeah, so it's like even if it's said, who is going to sue, or do you have the money to pay a lawyer to go through that process? And then the process is so long, it's going to drag. Do you even want to start it? So anybody can get away with saying anything. And then if they don't say it, it's implied. You can tell. And a lot of times, sadly, it's a woman telling you this. So we get that a lot. The pushback, unfortunately, a lot of times comes from the women, some older women who have been through the same thing and feel like, you know, I've been through
Why
it. So
does that
why do
happen?
you?
I think there is a lot of I went through it, so you should go through it too, versus
Yeah.
what it should be was we all deserve better, and how can I make it better for someone else?
Exactly.
But I think we do have this,
yeah.
we shouldn't want others to have it any easier than what we had, and I just don't get that.
And that's great. Yeah, people get that all the time. So there are women who are facing the discrimination during interviews, and then there are some who don't have help, and so they have to quit their jobs to stay home. I remember my mom; she was tagged as over, what do you say, under, no, overqualified but under experienced. Yeah, because she didn't have a lot of job experience, but then she had steady. She's going to do her masters, and then they wouldn't hire her. And so so that is one of the challenges. But then also with work, with maternity leave, for instance, in Ghana right now, it's a minimum. The law says a minimum of 3 months or 12 weeks, a minimum. And all, like, maybe not all, but majority of even the government agencies and the companies have decided to go for the minimum. So people do not even know that the law says a minimum. They just think it's just 12 weeks, but it's not. It's a minimum. So you can go up to 6 months.
And there's not like a sliding scale. I know, like in the UK, you have a certain amount of full pay, but you can take an additional amount at a percentage of pay.
So it's what they give you. And even with that, I know mothers who would work till the last day, and then they'll take the 12 weeks after they've had the baby, and then they have to come back in. So they make a decision. Abby, do I want to leave my baby, or do you want
to 3 months at full pay?
Yes. Okay. So that's 3 months at full. That's the law. So you have to, if there's anyone out there that's not getting full pay, then I don't know. But yeah, it's full pay. And so now we're working so that we can extend that to 4 months at least. I was hoping it would be 6 months, but even with the 4 months, there's been a lot of pushback.
Who was pushing back?
So okay, so what we are fighting for is 4 months for women, and then 2 weeks minimum for men, because we don't have a pattern. We don't, which I'm like, it's so ridiculous, 2024. But anyway, so now the women are pushing back on the men getting the paternity leave, because what they are saying is that the men will just take the leave and go be at the bar, and won't help at home, which I'm like, okay, that's, some men would do that, but there are so many hands-on fathers now. So I think that, we should give them a chance. So that's one part. And then also there are also women, like we said earlier, who are like, oh, I went through it, blah, blah. Then there are also women employers who feel like, why do I have to pay an extra month, when I didn't, experience that. And then there are also some men who, so it's like the pushback is from mainly business owners, small business owners, even big, business, proper established business owners who are like, I don't think I want to pay an extra month.
Pay.
So yes, so that. And then now what we are fearful of is that it would not be out there that they're discriminating, but they will, because it's like, do I want to hire a young woman who is now about to have a baby, so probably had one baby, and then have to pay her 4 months.
4 months.
And I can understand. Ghana is really hard right now. It's really tough. So I can understand that it's already hard, and then them having to add that. But if you look at it from our point of view, or our whatever we have to go through, leaving a 3-month-old baby at home is a lot. I own a daycare, and a lot of daycares in Ghana start from 6 months. I had to start from 3 months because I said, at the end of the day, there are mothers who have to go back to work. And so why don't we start the 3 months? We can have a breastfeeding lounge. You can come in, they can breastfeed, they can pick up and breastfeed as well. They can leave their milk behind. We'll store it. We'll feed the babies on demand. We'll even take pictures and things like that, just so that because I could tell the guilt that they feel. We see the milestones before them. So you can imagine what that's like. And even I am fighting for an extension, even though I have a daycare that, so people should understand that it's not beneficial to me at all, but I just feel like it's a human right. It has to happen. yeah, so
Yeah, it has to be a human right. And,
Mhm.
I say this often around mothering being valued as important work, right? And
Mhm.
so if there was an understanding of what that time commitment, whether that means from a public health perspective, whether that means from increased time breastfeeding, which gives you so many health benefits,
Mhm.
that early child development, mothers are there with their children, being with them, learning. It's just so much if we actually value that as important work. Um, and so we're in a same struggle trying to get more paid leave, it seems, on both sides. And ours is really, really bad. We can't seem to get anything passed.
Wow.
But it's really a challenge, right? And
Yeah.
people, the thing that I always thought was crazy, I could pay someone else to take care of my child,
Mhm.
but no one will pay me to take care of my child. In the US, we have, and some states have come on board. So I want to say that we now have a state by state situation
Okay.
because the federal government has failed. So many states have stepped in to create a better paid leave, but there were models out there where while you're working, you could pay in to your own maternity leave fund, as it were.
Wow.
And even they resisted that. Give me back the money that was my money. And
Wow.
that didn't get approved. So it's like this idea of being paid for mothering is crazy. But you could pay someone else, and many people are fighting to make sure that the people that are caretakers have rights and they're legal and they can pay taxes and they can get benefits and vacation pay. But you as a mother cannot.
Wow.
Can't take care of your own child, get any benefits. Nope.
Wow. Wow.
It's really backwards, right? And so we think of this system really about an economy and not a society, because a
Mhm.
society would want mothers and children to be together for as much as possible. An economy wants you to pay other people to do things that you could do
Mhm.
if they would let you, but you
Yeah.
can't because you got to get back to work and now you got to pay for childcare.
Mhm.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
So these are the things, obviously, for us as well. Childcare costs are astronomical. Which
Yeah.
is the one thing I want to talk about before we kind of, wind down is the business of birth, right?
Mhm.
Because we have a system in our country that is based upon insurance, right? Whether you have public insurance or private insurance. And this can determine where you can give birth, how nice they may treat you, what part of the hospital you may be in some places. It's really bad. It's really bad.
Right.
But what I learned is that you all have to pay cash for your births. And I was like, wait, what? So explain to us about the cost of birth in Ghana and how you pay to have your baby.
Right. So it's not everyone. I
Okay.
was on insurance. Yeah. So my husband has insurance that covers the
But how
entire
many
family.
people have insurance, do you
So
say?
if you're if you happen to be working at a bank or any of these multinationals or things like that, you will be on insurance.
Okay.
But if not, yes, you have to pay cash because unfortunately the NHIS here, no.
So
does
there's
not.
no national health
There
insurance.
is.
Oh, there is, but you still have to pay cash if you're on that.
So there is, but just like a lot of things that starts really nicely here, it kind of just, yeah. So it was like, oh, people went for their national health insurance cards, and then you could just walk into a hospital and then use that instead. But unfortunately, now you have to pay cash.
How much does it cost?
So I mean, it depends if you go public or private. With private consultation, for instance, can cost about almost 500 cedis, anything from 350 to 500 cedis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that's in dollars now, but
I'm not
yeah,
good at dividing by 15.
Yes, so but that's okay. So
$30.
that's
Okay.
so that's for
that's like your office visits
Yes.
during your prenatal time.
Yes, and that's for private. And then so usually that, and then the drugs, whatever it is that was the prescription that was given to you, you have to pay for that as well. So if it's like you have to get a pregnant care, whatever. You have to get pregnant care, which is right now I wouldn't remember what pregnant care, how much it is, but I think pregnant care will be maybe 250 or almost 300, almost about the same.
Mm-hmm.
For pregnant care, and then your what's it called? It's not zinc? Forgotten what that is, but yes, is it zinc? Zinc, and usually it's that, and then folic acid was what I was trying to remember. So folic acid, pregnant care. Usually,
the prenatal vitamins.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But that's again, there's pregnant care, there's the others.
Right.
So yeah, so it really depends on what hospital, what facility you decide to go to. A lot of women who cannot even afford government hospitals don't even go for
Right.
antenatal at all, because what is the point? If I can afford it, then I won't go. But then things like the classes, so the antenatal, what you call prenatal classes, and things like that. The hospital, some hospitals call it the prenatal school.
Mm-hmm.
These are all free, and they are
Mhm.
still free. Yeah, so yeah, and then
Okay, so you
of
have
course,
to pay for each of your prenatal appointments.
yes, and then and then also the birth. So
Right.
I realized that in the US, when you go to the hospital, things like the pads, the disposable, and things like that are all provided for you. No, Ghana, you have to pack your bag, everything.
So you need to bring your own, like the pads they put on the
The
bed.
pad no. So if you go to, again, I don't know what but even with the government hospitals, they will put something on the bed for you, but you have to come with extra just in case.
Mm.
So you pack the if it's disposable underwear, you get that. Pads,
You need your own sanitary napkins.
everything.
They will not provide that.
They will not provide that. Everything, like they will provide a hospital list that they'll give to you. So a hospital list which has everything, including antiseptic, whatever. Like,
You
yeah,
have to bring your own antiseptic.
everything. You have to bring everything. Yeah, you bring
What
all
if you
that.
want an epidural?
That is, yeah, that's extra.
That's
Extra cost.
extra.
Yeah, that's extra
So
cost.
you go to the birth, and then they're gonna. How much is it gonna cost you? So you got to bring your own bed, your pads.
Yeah.
You got to bring your own sanitary napkins. You got to bring your own antiseptic. We gave out Dettol in the community the other
Yes.
day.
Yes.
You need to obviously bring something for your baby to wear.
Yep.
You need to bring diapers for your baby.
Diapers
in
for
the
your baby,
hospital? Okay.
wipes, the baby's clothes, of course. What else? And it's a whole list, like mittens. They'll say mittens, onesies, sleep suits, and there's a number. Cot sheets. So even the cot sheets for the baby, you bring
Even
that.
the cot
The
sheets,
cover
the crib
cloths for the
sheets.
baby, you bring that. You bring all that. And they'll tell you numbers. I think it's about five cot sheets, because if you have a C-section, you be in the hospital for about 5 days.
Right.
So you bring 5. And then so cover sheets for the baby, and then for yourself, usually the sheets are usually on the bed, so you don't bring any of that. But the stuff that you use for yourself, you bring all that. And then your toiletries and clothes and
your
stuff.
toiletries and clothes, and then you bring all that. And how much does it cost? About
For all that?
no, for your birth. Like
the birth. Okay, so the birth, vaginal in a private hospital. Vaginal, because I was insurance, it's quite a lot. But I remember when I was leaving the hospital, my bill was almost about 15,000 cedis.
wow.
Yeah. And that was because, so again, that was also because I was in like an executive lounge,
Okay.
and the insurance covered all that.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was about 15, and it was the lounge, because of the lounge. The lounge comes with a private ward. So again, these are things that but I would say on the average, you'd spend somewhere about 5 to about 8,000 cedis.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's for a regular birth.
And so do
or
people
C-section.
start, like, how does that work? Do people start saving? So the minute you get pregnant, you got to put your money away. Do the family chip in? How do people afford that? When they have to literally pay out of pocket.
I don't know, but I'm guessing people would save. Some people borrow. Yeah, some people borrow. Some people save. Some people save and borrow. Yeah.
And then someone asked the scariest question, which was, what happens if people go into labor early? Right? Maybe you thought you had 2 more months to save, and you were planning that, and now your baby has come and you don't have the money.
Yeah. Because there are so many women who are stuck at the hospital. Like,
they won't let you out.
They won't let you out. I've been led to walk in and just pay for someone who was there for like months. What? Yeah, they'll keep you in. You'll be there. Yeah, so like Kolebu, which is like a national hospital. What's it called? They'll keep you in. You're not going to be discharged. There are some women who were raped, or maybe they had like a baby daddy who was like, "Oh, I'll go pay the bill and come back," and they don't come back, and then you're just at the hospital, and that's it. So you'll be there and every day it's adding up.
Right.
So yeah,
it's like a bad Ponzi scheme of some sort.
Yeah.
Where now they're charging you. And also, don't they want those beds for somebody else?
That's why a lot of times there are no beds. That's why, yeah, that's why a lot of times there are no beds, because there are people who are like they are in prison. I'm sorry, but yeah, they are there because they can't be discharged,
And they're
then
there
they are
because technically your baby's there.
exactly.
Or do you mean like they couldn't walk out the building?
No, you can't leave because you couldn't pay your bill, so you can leave.
You
So-
could not walk out the building.
Yeah, they will not let you out. You cannot leave. Yeah, so you're there. Yeah, so there are people who are there like that. And funny enough, if you deliver early, like if it's like a preemie birth, what happens is there's no bed for the mother. And that is, I've always said this is so weird. So I don't know if when you came, do you ever visit Kolebu or any of those hospitals? You should have.
We visited a hospital. Now I forgot the name.
Okay. So if you visit a hospital like Kolebu, for instance, like there's no bed for the mothers if your baby is detained, So there are mothers who
Oh, yes,
sleep
that's where we
and
went.
sit on the chair, a plastic chair, the entire night,
Mm.
or on the floor. So it's one or the other. And these are not, like, you see, the thing about Ghana is, unfortunately, there are certain cases that would definitely be referred to Kolebu. Even if you have the money to pay for a private hospital, there are certain things that, because all the specialists are there.
Mm-hmm.
So why we're all crying for them to fix Kolebu is because you could be there. Like and if you're there, this is what you're going to see. Like there's a maternity ward over there. I don't know if they fixed it now, but there's a time when the door was broken. And so mothers would leave with malaria. And I'm like, why would I come to the hospital to deliver and then I'm leaving with malaria?
Right.
Just because it's broken and it's not fixed. So you come in with maybe or if you didn't come in with that, you're leaving with malaria. Or the water is nowhere. Yeah, the water isn't flowing. There's a particular flaw that the water, it's like, so there's all these like external things that add on to the stress of the birth and all that. But yes, if you cannot pay, you will be detained, and that's just
Wow.
how it works.
When someone said that, I was shocked.
Yeah.
Because, as much as our system is broken, they do want you out that hospital, and they will harass you afterwards. They may come to your house, call your phone 800 times a day, ruin your
Wow.
credit, try to take your house maybe, but they will let you go.
Yeah.
So just
No.
really interesting, like, and I think culturally, because in my mind, I'm like, but I'm gonna duck out and run, right? I'm like, that's why I'm like, how can they keep me there? In my
Yeah.
mind. But I think the culture would probably be like, oh, I can't leave.
No, you can't leave. Like unless you're leaving without the baby.
Right.
But
Well,
yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna go get I'm gonna go round up the people and I'll be back.
No.
But I can't keep staying here.
Yeah.
Just a very different kind of experience. One of the things that I think really is a cloud over Black motherhood in America is this idea of stereotypes, right? And I often say that, Black women were used and continue to be very well known for taking and desire to take care of other people's children, but somehow we're viewed as incapable of taking care of our own, right? And it's like, and this story, this very false story of us as not as good mothers, like good, quote unquote, good motherhood has been the bastion of white women. And then Black women have been perceived as bad mothers, right? And that we are, in our country, perceived as people take advantage of the system or, just all types of negative stereotypes. And so these are the things that we're battling. I have two questions for you in that. One is, what do Ghanaians think of Black women?
Okay, so I think for us, we view you guys as like privileged. Yeah, privileged. Like, oh, like, you're from a system that actually works. So a lot of times it's almost like, oh wow, so you're an American, you're still complaining, that kind of thing. It's
like our system's broken too.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah,
What else?
it's like when I know people are just like, what are they doing here? Like, because people want to leave and go there, and then you guys are rather, flocking here. It's like, how? So yeah, just privileged. Your people. So I don't necessarily have that perception, only because I do read a lot and I do see a lot of the things that you've shared with me. I know what's it called? What they call it? CPS can come take your baby.
Right.
I've followed quite a number of stories, so I see that. But for the most part, a lot of Ghanaian women believe that Black American women are privileged. They have it all. What are you complaining about? Yeah, that's it's like,
I'm not saying
yeah,
there's always truth somewhere,
yeah,
but there is a lot to complain about. Yeah, and I think people forget to think about like what enslavement did to Black people when we were taken from these shores, right? And how that, and I was thinking about this when we were at the Cape, right? It wasn't just about a trade. It was about a system that came from that trade, a system of oppression that we are literally still fighting today, that we are still under today. And so this, yes, the trade has ended and the place is a museum, but that system that came from that is very much alive and a big part of our lives, right? And um, I don't think that we feel understood and
yeah.
what that has been like, because you live in a country where you get to see people who look like you all day, every
I was going
day.
to say that.
And that was when people said to me, "What do you love about Ghana?" I was like, "I have not. I see people who look like me all day."
Yeah.
And didn't even realize how much I needed that, right? Didn't even realize how much I needed that. And so
Yeah.
I think, we view you all as having the privilege
Mm-hmm.
of being able to see yourself every place you go. That is a privilege that
Yeah.
we don't have.
Yeah, because I have family out there. Like I have a cousin who's in the UK, and then recently, not recently, about a couple of years ago, my son drew Santa, right? And then he colored Santa brown
Mm-hmm.
because he had never seen a white Santa before.
Right.
So then she was like, wow, like the fact that like Santa is brown to him, he's never seen a. So I remember even the first time he saw a white Santa on TV, he was like, oh, so they don't call white people, they call them cream, and then they call us brown. So it's like, oh, that's cream. Why is the man cream? Like, it's like why is Santa cream? So I had to kind of explain like, oh, different races and that kind of thing. But the fact that I had to explain, because we do have that privilege
Right.
of just seeing, and then even seeing a lot of Black Americans come in here, go to the slave castles, and then like cry. Let me tell you, like we grew up going to the slave castle, and it didn't do anything for us until I was older. Now I listen to the stories and I'm emotional. Back then, it was just like it's part of like social studies. That's what we called it. So you sit in a trip on a bus and you go and they talk about slavery, blah blah, and it's just like social studies, slavery, and then that was it. Like
I
you don't.
cried.
Yeah, I know.
Mhm.
So when I was like, then I started to hear a lot of like, oh, I'm seeing people that are like the same shade as me, and I'm like, wow, like these are things that we see,
Right.
and then also what maybe I don't know if I guess it's slavery, because the thing about Ghana is now fortunately I think it's kind of whatever, it's getting better, but first a white person was like
Right.
a lot, like
Right.
yeah. So it was like, so if you're white, okay, and then if you're mixed, it's like okay, all the privileges,
Right. That's
yeah.
right.
And that was how it was here. I think fortunately now more and more, like you see more foreigners, so it's not such a big deal, but even in some villages it's still a big deal.
Mhm.
So I know and I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's just yeah, that's just how we
It's just
grew up.
stereotypes and
Yeah.
perception, and I think on the other side of it, we have been longing for something, right? I mean, I am pure Black American.
Mhm.
People like, where are your parents from? America. Where are their parents from? America. It's a slave ship and America for me. And like my parents aren't from the Caribbean or anything like that, right? And some people can't fathom that. So I have no history or roots that I know of except America. And I refuse to take the test because I don't think that we should have to pay to find out where they stole me from. I'm like, that should be free. I'm waiting for us to get our reparations from the
Mhm.
ancestry people, because that's what I'm standing for.
Right.
But and so for people who don't have a connection, like we've been yearning for that, and so a lot of people, even like when we were calling ourselves African Americans, a lot of Africans were like, "Y'all not Africans to us," and so it was like a second rejection. Like we don't belong here. We know that America's not where we're from. We have nothing else. And then we have this longing to be connected to a continent where we know we are from, but the people there are like, nah, you're not like us. And it's like a second level of rejection and being without a home.
Right.
And so one of the things that I appreciate about my time here this week was when I meet people, and it could be the tourism, I'm okay with that. But when they say, "Oh, you're from America, welcome home," and I just love that. I'm getting emotional. I'm getting myself goosebumps, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I do have a home," right? And so, yeah. But I think so many of us have been longing to, like, we don't know where we're from, and someone stole that from us, and we've just been looking, and so I think that is probably why we're here. So I want you to tell our Ghanaian sisters that's why we're here. So it's like, the privilege doesn't fill the hole, right? The privilege doesn't fill the void. And so I think many of us come here trying to fill a void and get some understanding, to feel rooted to something. And that's really, really important. And so I always think of motherhood as a universal unifier, right? And so regardless of where we're from, we all want the best for our children. We all want to have what we deserve as we bring our babies into this world. And so I think that is a phenomenal thread that I hope that you and I can continue to, kind of weave together around bringing these two worlds through motherhood as an important kind of equalizer.
Right. But can I ask you a question? Like, when you came here, were there any similarities? Were there any things that you felt like, oh, this is something that we do back home, or this is like, I understand why we do this way, like, because I feel like even like from your food, like, and like, like, I know Black Americans talk a lot about flavor and like seasoning, like a chicken, things like that. and like, I felt like that is from Africa, because that is what, that's food is everything. Like, and it's how Thanksgiving, you guys come together and like cooking from like morning all the way. Like, we grew up, we still do that. Like, just cooking all day, like aunties, uncles, coming together and all that. And it's just interesting that did not get lost.
That's right. Food as a central part of our culture. Food is love, like just that experience. For me, it's not Thanksgiving per se, but like it was more of a family reunion kind of thing. But people coming together, aunties spending all day cooking. New Year's Day is been a big thing in my family. Somebody cooking black-eyed peas for good luck. Like having some kind of food that's related to a cultural belief. Music. Being very much about it, like the drummers. I was like, this is in my body. I feel this. I was born for this. Music being our culture and all these things that I think are still in us. And then of course our genius and our brilliance, right? Look at what Black people did in America. Look at what Black people did in America. And I'm like, that is genius, right? And the fact that one of the things I'm incredibly proud of as a Black person in America is that we came there under the worst conditions, and I knew they were bad, but I really learned how bad they were, right? And we were able to create a culture that is now all over the world. Hip hop music, Black people, Black movie stars. We really turned it around. I said, I know the ancestors are looking at us like, wow.
So proud.
We're so proud. And then of course it's for us to figure out what is it we need to do with that. But I think that's something that we are incredibly proud of. We created something when everything was taken from us, but we feel that foundation is still there. The family thing, the respect for family. I go home to what my daddy calls home in South Carolina. He's reminding us, you got to say ma'am, you got to say this, you got to remember your manners, respect your elders, like those kind of cultural things. You don't talk back to people. Like that type of respect for elders was also part of my upbringing, and I know that's very much cultural. And so much of that, I think, that we know doesn't exist in some of the white cultures. It's just really, really important. My son went to a very progressive school where they call teachers by their first names, and I was like, oh no, he will not. Oh no, he will not. You need to put a Miss or Mr. in front of that or something, right? Like I can't have you calling adults by their first name. Like again, the ancestors. I'm like, we can't do that. So much that just doesn't feel right or sit right with us, but it just comes from that culture. And I think, I've been happy to see that and see, like, I didn't know who I am as an American is very, very different. In many ways it is. I get it.
But
But
one of the things I actually want to mention is the fact that I am grateful that a lot of Black Americans are coming back home.
Mhm.
And that's just because it's made a lot of us also see value in what we have. Like a lot of times you take things for granted, but I think seeing, oh, wow, like, a lot of things that we took for granted, now I see a lot of value in, even down to names. Like my daughter, she's Ohima, and Ohima, she's called Ohima, and Ohima stands for queen, and it's a local name. And in Ghana, it's like, because of the religion, Christianity being a big part of what we do, you realize that a lot of people have the English name or Bible name first, and then the local name is second, and then that is what they call like Efiedin, which is like a house name,
right.
and then it's hidden.
Right.
So it's not something that we really embrace. So for me, like, I grew up in a home where none of us have English names. It's all local names. Eno means mother. So even the that I'm doing this, I'm like, oh my goodness, like
Wow.
yeah. And I remember back then I was like, why, Daddy? Like, there are people called Tiffany, and I'm telling you, like, that's how it was growing up. It was like, why do you have a local name? Like, it wasn't interesting. It was like looked down on. It's now I think seeing you guys embrace a lot of the things that we took for granted. People come in here and then asking for their day names, and then picking up
My bracelet, they gave it to me. I'm a Ya. My name is Ya.
You see, so you look at how you're even saying it and smiling. Like, we didn't grow up, like, we grew up and it was almost like, no, you want the other, we want what we don't have, which is like the foreign names. And so seeing that, we are like, okay, no, I think then I'm also proud to be, because I'm a Wednesday born, I'm also proud to be Ikea, and all that. So with my daughter, like, my mom is Elizabeth, so she her first name is Elise because it was named after my mom. But I always call her Ohima, because people are like, "Hey, how come all of a sudden you're like, traditional?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, I'm embracing my roots now, and that's where I am now, because I'm loving like how you guys are embracing what we already have." I have a grandfather who is a historian. He's a chief in our hometown. And one day when you come, I would love to introduce you to, because he is a historian. So he'll tell you all about, like, the Ashanti Kingdom and how we fought the British, and he was really proud of it. So I had aunties who were telling me, like, they tell you, be a little bit prideful, like, that's how I grew up. It was like, yeah, be proud of where you're coming from. But I didn't get it until I grew up and saw some of these things. So thank you guys. Yeah.
It's been an incredible experience, and it's been phenomenal to watch, other Black women and just reclaiming. And yeah, it's been a beautiful experience. So
Yeah.
I'm always looking at ways that we can kind of get to our true stories and to our true selves, right? The thing we know about motherhood is that it expands you, right? And I always say motherhood expands you. Like, you think you can't, but then you can. Before we wrap, I want you to share, like, what are some ways that you see motherhood expand you?
Okay, so right. I remember when I had my first, so the transition from not having a child to having one, I thought it was just going to be one child, right? But I felt overwhelmed. Like, I just felt like, okay, like, now, like, how come I have to take care of someone who cannot brush their teeth? But so everything I do for myself, I have to do for this little one. So it was a lot for me, and it was a learning curve. But again, after a while, I got used to it. I was able to do it. Then the second came, and I felt like I had 12 kids. So that was also another thing that was kind of a curveball that was thrown to me. Again, as women, I was able to find, my feet somehow. I complained a lot, but then I got it done. And then again with the third, I feel it was easier because by then I knew how to handle multiples.
Now the third always scared me because I'm like, I only have two hands.
I thought,
I don't know what
honestly,
to do with three.
no, I think the third was easier, but also because of the spacing. I had the two back to back, was a year apart. But with this one, my second, well, the first is turning 7 this year, second turning 6, and then the last is she's a baby. So they are just doing their own thing. So that has helped. And then also I have more help now and things like that. So, when they talk about parenting being different for every child and all that, I think it's different for her, but I'm just in a different space now. But yes, it's definitely, it's taught me a lot. Motherhood has taught me a lot. Like we're talking about expansion, definitely. But I feel like it's also been a blessing because even though like I'm giving a lot to them, but I'm also receiving a lot. Then also I'm learning a lot about myself. Like
Mhm.
my first is a replica of me. Like he's all the good and bad things that I don't like about myself. I see it. Sometimes I feel like such a hypocrite when I tell him, don't bite your nails, because I bite my nails. So it's like all these things. I'm like, yeah, but when I see that, I'm like, okay, so I have to make a mental note not to bite my nails because look at what he's doing. So it's taught me things like that. When I observe them, I see things like my first, again, he's an extrovert just like me. My second is an introvert just like my husband. And so I had to understand my husband in order to be able to parent him because I was like, okay, I cannot bring him up the same way I'm bringing the first. He's not him. When we have like Christmas, Santa, the second is an introvert. He's like, this is a stranger. I don't want to sit on his lap. What is this? Just give me my gifts and let me leave. So he's just, and that's it. And I don't force him. But when you don't observe things like that, you end up saying things. So again, let me go back to the Ghanaian culture. We have this thing where we don't necessarily embrace introverts. Um, there's a saying, I'm going to translate it in English, which is like, it's almost like you don't like, when they say you don't like humans, this is like word for word translation, but it's said in an interesting way where it's like you don't like humans. And it's said like a bad thing, like, why don't you like humans? Like, why don't you like people? So then it's like, oh, you're stuck up. Yeah, it's like, oh, she doesn't, yeah. So you're supposed to be in our culture, you're supposed to be very friendly, very talkative, ask questions. So whenever people meet people who are introvert, like my husband, I still nudge him to this day. When my mom asks, how are you doing? And he says, I'm fine. I have to nudge him and say, ask her how she's also doing. To this day, because it doesn't come to him naturally. He writes his small talk down all the time before his meetings.
Yes.
And
Oh.
and these are the things that I actually love about him because I'm like, you're crazy, and I love that crazy side.
You need that compliment, that balance.
Yeah. And so because of that, when I see my second boy behaving in a certain way, I'm like, oh, that's for my husband. And then I understand it, and then I know how to kind of explain him. So I have to explain him a lot to my first and to people. I have to do that. I have to like really like, and then when I do that, he appreciates it because he's like, even when I remember when I mentioned the word introvert to him, he felt like, oh, finally I have a word that explains who I am.
Yes.
He's like, oh, okay, mommy, introvert. Okay. So yeah, so they have taught me a lot about myself, about my family, about themselves. I've learned a lot. Because of them, I can also share these things with other mothers for them to, kind of know that they're not alone and understand certain, things that they may be going through. So yeah.
That's beautiful. And what's bringing you joy right now?
Right now, is it bad for me to say work?
No, there are no bad answers here.
Yeah, like because I feel like because my platform is Talkative Mom, people always think that joy is motherhood, but really is what I'm doing right now. I feel like last year was kind of hard for me, very, very hard. But this year has stabilized a bit more. I feel like I know because I'd never owned a physical space. So dealing with like things like overhead costs and utilities and paying stuff and
lights gotta be on.
I almost closed. I always say this thing, I almost closed shop. I was like done. By November, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. But there's been a turnaround this year. So I feel like I finally found my footing. We're expanding, like I said. I'm meeting so many incredible people this year, even like yourself. Like I've met so many incredible people this year. So I'm just finally at a good place, and I'm getting to do what I love, which is something I've been yearning for the longest time. Doing what I love that pays.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I think
we can't
that
forget
was
about that part. We can't forget about that part.
So
because we can do good and that's
yes,
really important.
Yes.
And I'm glad to hear. So the studio is available for people to book out for events.
Yes, for events. So you can book it for it. But usually we just want to make sure that it's events centered around family, women, women empowerment, communities, things like that, things that kind of make sense within what we're already doing. So it's
The space
available
was
for
amazing, and we had a beautiful lunch on the veranda, and there were
Yes.
vendors out. It was just really nice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure I'm sharing all my photos. I've been negligent,
Thank
mostly
you.
just sleepy, but
Yeah.
but it's been.
I
it's
also
been so
have a
exciting.
podcast as
Okay.
well. Yeah, I have a podcast called Truly Talkative, and
Truly Talkative.
Truly Talkative. So that's it's on Instagram right now, but you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, and then also on Spotify. And what else? Yeah, on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube. So that we just explore our childhood and then how it impacts our relationships today. Yeah. So
Ooh.
it's-
Hope you got a therapist on staff for that one. But
Yeah.
those are important conversations, particularly as
Yeah.
Black people, for us to have. I think
Yep.
that one of the things that I find so beautiful about what's happening with Black parents is like we are redefining it, right? Many of us grew up in a house where we were not allowed to speak, or we received a lot of spankings, and
Yeah.
I'm saying spankings, nicely,
Yeah.
because we know we got beatings, and that we're building something different for our own children, right? Where we actually allow them to question, and
Yeah.
respectfully, of course, and we don't necessarily go to the belt as our first thing, or just really trying to blend the things that are important for our culture with a new way of parenting. And I find that journey to be so beautiful, and I enjoy watching other people on it as well. Like, what is it that we want to take, and what is it that we might want to sit down? Like, we're just going to leave that over there, and we're going to try something new. And what I love about that is watching my own parents see that parenting, and they're like, because they only did what they knew.
Yeah.
And they did the best they could with what they had, right? But they're seeing something new. They see my children doing something different, and it's been an education for them as well. And that's a beautiful experience for us to be having.
Yeah.
And now I close every episode of Birthright by asking all of my guests this question: what is our birthright?
So, you mean our or mine?
Either or.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think our birthright is to be able to exist and be who we truly were meant to be. Yeah, like if we can all embrace who we were meant to be, we will all shine. A lot of us, again, let me just talk for the Ghanaian community. I've realized that Ghanaians are typically not original because we are afraid to be who we are supposed to be. We would rather be who we were told we're supposed to be, which is like from our parents or whoever is taking care of us, or what we see works. So it's like, okay, this thing works, I'm going to do it. But is that you? So I think our birthright is just to embrace who we are and just be who we are actually supposed to be. And it's, who you're supposed to be. No one is going to tell you. You don't have to find it or anything like that. It is in you. It's that thing that you love. It's that thing that you keep doing. It's that thing that you're drawn to and all that. So just be who you're supposed to be. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. To be free, which seems fitting in Ghana.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for making time on a Saturday evening to come out and talk to me. I'm so grateful for having met you, for having experienced your studio, your movement, your platform. I know that we will be staying in touch and doing more things. But I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me time today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Birthright, a podcast about joy and healing in Black birth. And I have been honored to bring you this special episode live from Ghana. Please check out all the comments and notes I will add so you can follow Talkative Mom and on all the socials, and stay up to date with Eno's work. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.